My name is Christina, 31 years old. I texted the family group chat the way I always did. Clean, simple, no room for misunderstanding. My surgery's on the 12th. Just need someone to drive me home. Shouldn't be more than an hour at the hospital. I stared at the little gray check marks, willing them to turn blue. I didn't add emojis. I didn't explain. I didn't dramatize. I'd learned long ago that extra words only gave people more to twist. Amber replied first. Lowell, you actually thought we'd miss Cabo for that. It landed with a dull thud, like something heavy dropped in another room. A few seconds later, my mom chimed in. Don't guilt us. This trip's been planned for months. I read it twice, 3 times. The words didn't change. The tone didn't soften. There was no, "Are you okay?" tucked between the lines. No, we'll figure something out. Just a verdict. Vacation over daughter. Cocktails over stitches. I typed back 2 words. My mistake. I didn't add anything else. I didn't wait for a response. I set my phone face down on the table and stared at the faint ring a mug had left in the wood. It felt familiar. This quiet acceptance. This swallowing of something sharp so no one else had to choke on it. If you'd asked my family, they would have said I was the strong one, the practical one, the one who had it together. That was the story they liked best because it meant they never had to worry about me. Strength in our house had always meant low maintenance. Amber hadn't always laughed at me. When I was 8, she braided my hair before school and told me I was her favorite little genius. She used to sneak into my room at night and whisper secrets about boys and teachers and how she'd escape this town someday. Back then, we were a team, or at least I thought we were. Somewhere between her graduating college and discovering influencer culture, I stopped being her sister and became her backup plan. It started small. She forgot her credit card at brunch, so I paid. She double-booked an eyelash appointment and needed someone to pick up her dog. She cried because she rear-ended a Mercedes and didn't know what to do, so I wired the money and told her it was fine. It was always fine, until it wasn't. Mom used to call me the practical one with a smile, like it was a compliment. I see now it was a designation. The one you can lean on without asking. The one who won't make noise when the weight gets heavy. When Dad died, the insurance payout was split between Amber and me. Mom cried at the kitchen table and said she couldn't cover the mortgage. I handed over my half without a word. Amber didn't call me for 2 weeks after that. When she finally did, she was in Mexico. She told me she'd already booked a retreat package and couldn't change it. I remember standing in my tiny apartment, phone pressed to my ear, thinking, of course she couldn't. By the time I turned 31, my body had started keeping score. 2 herniated discs, an ulcer from skipping meals to afford rent and medications, a constant low-grade exhaustion that sleep never touched. Still, I showed up. Still, I paid. Still, I said yes. So when my gynecologist told me I'd need a minor laparoscopic surgery to remove a benign mass, I told myself this would be different. It wasn't life-threatening. I wasn't asking for days of care, just a ride home. Someone to sit with me for a few hours while the anesthesia wore off. I didn't want to ask friends. I was embarrassed by how thin my life had become, by how the responsible one had quietly slipped into debt. That's why I texted the family chat. That's why Amber's LOL felt like a slap. It wasn't just a refusal, it was a public joke at my expense, a reminder of my place. I didn't cry. Not then. I opened my calendar and scheduled an Uber for 4 p.m., from the surgical center to my apartment. I arranged a spare key with my landlord just in case. I stocked crackers and ginger ale I prepared. I always prepared. They taught me that. In the days leading up to the surgery, the group chat stayed silent. No follow-up. No, "Are you nervous?" Amber posted stories from Cabo, sunlit pools, coconut drinks, captions about manifesting health and wealth. I watched them with the sound off, my thumb hovering over the screen like I might drop it. The night before the procedure, I lay awake, listening to the refrigerator hum. I told myself I didn't need them. I told myself I'd done harder things alone. Still, a small, traitorous part of me wondered what it would feel like to wake up and see a familiar face instead of fluorescent lights. The morning of the surgery, the hospital smelled like antiseptic and coffee. A nurse with kind eyes checked my bracelet and asked who would be driving me home. I said, Uber, like it was the most normal thing in the world. She paused for half a second, barely noticeable, but I felt it. That tiny crack where judgment or concern might slip through. I changed into the thin gown and folded my clothes the way I'd been taught, neat and contained. As they wheeled me toward the operating room, I checked my phone one last time. Nothing. No texts, no calls. I set it down and stared at the ceiling tiles as they passed overhead, counting them like stars. When the anesthesiologist asked if I was nervous, I smiled. A little, I said. I didn't mention the other fear, the one that had nothing to do with scalpels or scars. The fear that this moment, this small ask, had finally revealed what I'd spent years refusing to see. As the medication crept in, warm and heavy, a thought floated up, uninvited and sharp. If this doesn't matter to them, whatever will? The room faded, the lights blurred, and somewhere far away my phone buzzed. Not with concern, not with love, but with another photo from Cabo. I didn't see it then. I would later. And when I did, I'd understand that the surgery wasn't the beginning of the pain. It was the beginning of the truth. I woke up to the sound of my own breathing, slow and uneven, like I was relearning how to use my lungs. The first thing I noticed was the light, too bright, too close, pressing against my eyelids, even before I opened them. My mouth tasted like metal. My stomach rolled in a slow, sickening wave. "Hey," a voice said gently, "you're okay. Surgery's over." I turned my head and saw the nurse, older than my mom, gray hair tucked neatly into a bun, eyes soft behind wire-rimmed glasses. Her name badge read Claire. She smiled the kind of smile you give someone who looks smaller than they should. "Everything went smoothly," she continued. "Doctor said it was textbook." I nodded, or at least I tried to. My neck felt like it was made of sand. My hands twitched against the thin hospital blanket, searching for something solid. Habit made me reach for my phone before I even knew why. No messages. I blinked hard, waiting for the screen to refresh, for concern to materialize if I stared long enough. Nothing from Mom, nothing from Amber, just notifications, ads, a calendar reminder, and then an Instagram alert I hadn't meant to open. Amber's story loaded instantly. There she was, stretched out on a poolside lounger, skin glowing, sunglasses tilted just enough to show a lazy smile. A coconut sat on the table beside her, a tiny umbrella stabbed into the top. Manifesting health, wealth, and hot weather, the caption read, #Cabo Diaries. Something in my chest cracked. I turned my head too fast and gagged, barely managing to reach the trash can beside the bed before I vomited. My body shook with it, sharp and humiliating. Claire was there immediately, one hand steadying my shoulder, the other holding my hair back. "Easy," she murmured. "Anesthesia can do that." Tears leaked out of my eyes, hot and uncontrollable, mixing with the nausea. I hated myself for crying. I hated that it took this small, pathetic moment to break the dam. "Shh," she said, rubbing slow circles on my back. "You're all right, sweetheart." No one had called me that in a long time. When the wave passed, she handed me water and waited while I sipped it in tiny, careful swallows. "Your ride's on the way," she said, checking her chart. "Yeah," I replied. "Uber." She looked up, just a flicker. "No family with you today?" I shrugged, forcing a smile that felt like it might split my face. They had other plans. Her lips pressed together, but she didn't ask anything else. Instead, she handed me a small packet of crackers. "You'll want something in your stomach before you leave." They wheeled me out an hour later. The hallway felt longer than it had that morning. The world tilted at a strange angle, like I was watching it through glass. As they helped me into the wheelchair by the exit, I checked my phone again. Still nothing. Amber had posted another story. This one of the ocean. The Uber arrived right on time. The driver didn't look at me twice as he helped me into the back seat. To him, I was just another fare, another quiet woman clutching her bag and trying not to wince every time the car hit a bump. The ride home blurred together, stoplights bleeding into each other, the hum of traffic vibrating through my bones. I kept one hand pressed to my abdomen, the other gripping the door handle like it might anchor me to something real. Every red light felt too long. Every green light felt rushed. When we pulled up to my apartment, the driver asked if I needed help getting inside. I said no, automatically. Pride is a hard habit to break. Inside, the apartment smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and the soup I'd made the night before. I kicked off my shoes and shuffled to the bedroom, lowering myself onto the bed with a carefulness that bordered on fear. Pain bloomed, sharp and insistent, but the meds dulled it to something manageable. I stared at the ceiling fan as it spun, counting rotations. I told myself this was fine. I told myself I preferred it this way. Alone meant no disappointment. Alone meant no waiting for people who never showed up. By evening, the pain meds had pulled me under a heavy, dreamless sleep. I woke hours later to the buzz of my phone on the nightstand. My heart jumped before I could stop it. Still nothing. 3 days passed like that. Restless sleep, soup and crackers, silence. I kept my phone nearby, face up now, like I was daring it to prove me wrong. On the third night, I fell asleep on the couch, the TV murmuring to itself. The phone rang, sharp and insistent, dragging me out of a half-dream. I squinted at the screen. Unknown number. Hello? My voice sounded rough, like I'd been screaming. Hi, is this Christina Cruz? A woman asked. Her tone was professional, careful. Yes. This is Mary from Northlake Medical. Your mother called earlier today trying to reach you. I'm calling to confirm your condition, per the consent form you signed. My pulse spiked. She called the hospital? Yes. She was persistent, Mary said delicately. We didn't give out details, of course, but I was able to confirm that your procedure went well and that you were discharged and transported home. How did she take that? I asked, already knowing the answer would hurt. There was a pause. She sounded surprised that you didn't have someone with you. I let out a short, humorless laugh. That tracks. After we hung up, I stared at my phone, the screen glowing in the dim room. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, like dominoes falling, the messages started coming in. Christina, why didn't you tell us you were going alone? Mom wrote. You should have said something. I assumed you had someone else. Another buzz. I talked to the hospital. That wasn't okay. Then Amber. Wait, you actually went through with it alone? Are you serious? I feel kind of bad now. Like, not bad, but you should have said something if you were desperate. Desperate. The word settled in my stomach like poison. I didn't respond. I opened the chat settings and archived the conversation. My thumb steady as I slid it out of sight. My body ached, my stitches pulled, and beneath it all, something else throbbed. A quiet, growing certainty that whatever came next wouldn't be gentle. They knew now, and knowing, I realized, wouldn't make them kinder. Amber FaceTimed me the next morning. I watched the screen light up from across the room, her name flashing like a dare. I let it ring. It stopped. A second later, it rang again. I considered ignoring it completely, letting her stew in her own discomfort the way I'd learned to do so well. But something in me, maybe curiosity, maybe the need to finally hear her say it out loud, made me tap accept. Her face filled the screen, tanned and bright, hair braided with tiny beads she'd probably paid too much for. The ocean shimmered behind her, a postcard version of concern. But her eyes were tight, calculating. Hey, she said. Her voice dropped into that careful register she used when she wanted to seem reasonable. Why didn't you answer? I was asleep, I said. It wasn't a lie. She exhaled loudly. Okay, well, look. I didn't realize you were actually going alone. I thought maybe you had a friend or something. I asked you. You laughed, I replied. My voice sounded distant to my own ears, like it belonged to someone else. I was joking, she said quickly, rolling her eyes. You know how I joke. No, I said. I know how you deflect. She frowned. Christina, it was a minor procedure. You're fine now, right? I stared at her, really stared. The way she angled the camera just right. The way she kept checking her own reflection in the corner of the screen. It was surgery, I said. I was under anesthesia. Technically, she said, lips pursed, but you're okay. There it was. Survival as proof that nothing mattered. She bit her lip, then brightened slightly, like she'd found the solution to a problem she didn't want to feel guilty about. Anyway, I talked to Mom. She's really upset, keeps saying we look like monsters. Which is dramatic, but yeah. I said nothing. So, Amber continued, we were thinking maybe we should fly back early, like tomorrow. The vibes here are kind of off anyway. The words slid into place, neat and hollow. Not because of you. Not because we messed up. Just because the mood had soured. I leaned closer to the screen, my stitches pulling as I shifted. You don't need to come back. She blinked. What? I don't need anything from you, I said. I'm handled. Her mouth opened, then closed. Christina, that's not what this is about. It is for me. She laughed softly, confused. Okay, but you don't get to be mad that we're trying to fix it. I'm not mad, I said, and I realized it was true. I was past that. I'm done. I ended the call. She tried again immediately. I declined. Then I blocked her number. The silence that followed felt heavy, but also clean, like a room after you've finally thrown something away. Mom showed up that afternoon. I hadn't told her where I lived. She must have dug through old paperwork, or maybe Amber had finally remembered my address. Either way, when the knock came, it startled me so badly I gasped. I opened the door slowly. She stood there with her purse clutched to her chest, eyes glossy, mouth trembling like she'd practiced this moment in the mirror. "I didn't know," she said, the words spilling out before I could speak. "Yes, you did," I replied. She broke right there on my welcome mat, shoulders shaking, breath hitching. For a moment, a familiar instinct rose in me, the urge to pull her inside, to soothe, to make it better. I stepped back instead and turned toward the couch. If she wanted in, she'd have to step over her own guilt. She hovered in the doorway for a full minute before finally asking, "Can I come in?" I didn't answer. I just lowered myself onto the couch, careful of my abdomen, and waited. She sat across from me, stiff and small, purse still locked in both hands like it was a lifeline. Her eyes darted around the room, taking in the pill bottles, the ginger ale, the blankets. Evidence. "Christina," she began softly, "I had no idea you were completely alone." "You had every idea," I said. Her jaw tightened. "You didn't say it was serious." "I told you the date. I told you I needed a ride." She opened her mouth, closed it. Amber said... Amber laughed. That stopped her. She shifted in her seat, looking for ground. "We just assumed you were exaggerating. You've always been so independent." "You mean quiet." "I mean strong." "No," I said, "you mean convenient." She flinched. "That's not fair." I reached for the pharmacy receipt on the table and slid it toward her. "That's $312 in meds I had to pay out of pocket because I couldn't use the family insurance card anymore." Her brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" "I called the provider. The plan was maxed out last month." Color drained from her face. "That can't be right. Amber said..." "She said it was for migraines," I finished. "But it was a salon in Beverly Hills." Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. Then, suddenly, anger flared. "You have no idea what it's like being her mother," she said, voice trembling. "She needs a lot. She always has." "And I wasn't supposed to need anything," I said quietly. The silence that followed was thick, pressing in on both of us. She looked down at her hands. "You never complained." Because complaining didn't change anything. Something in her sagged. Her shoulders slumped, the fight draining out of her. For a moment, I saw her clearly, not as my mother, not as a villain, but as a woman who had made choices and didn't like where they'd led. "Do you know what it felt like," I continued, my voice shaking despite myself, "to wake up from anesthesia and realize the nurse was the only one holding my hand?" Her eyes filled. "I'm sorry." "No," I said, "you're afraid." She shook her head. "That's not true." "It is," I snapped. "You're afraid of how this looks, of what people will say if they find out." She sobbed then, face crumpling. I watched for a long moment, then stood, my body protesting. "You should go," I said. Her head snapped up. "Christina, please." "I'm tired," I replied, "and your guilt hurts worse than my stitches." She stood slowly, clutching her purse like it might anchor her to this moment. "Where do we go from here?" I met her gaze, not back. She left without another word. As the door clicked shut, I sank back onto the couch, shaking. Outside, a car passed, music thumping, life moving on. Inside, something final had settled. They'd seen it now, the cost, the damage. And I knew, with a certainty that scared me, that Amber wouldn't let this end quietly. Amber showed up the next morning. I knew it was her before I even reached the door. The knock wasn't hesitant like Mom's had been. It was sharp, insistent, each rap landing with the confidence of someone who believed they still belonged on the other side of the door. I didn't open it. She knocked again, louder, then pounded, the sound rattling the frame. My phone buzzed in my hand. "Open up, we need to talk." Another message followed almost immediately. I canceled the last 2 nights of Cabo and flew back early. Be grateful. Be grateful. I took a slow breath and walked to the door. I didn't invite her in. I just opened it enough to look at her. She was still in airport sweats, expensive sneakers spotless, sunglasses perched on her head like a crown. Her skin glowed with leftover sun, but her mouth was set in an irritated line. "God," she said, eyes sweeping over me, "you look like hell." "Thanks," I replied. "Surgery does that." She huffed and crossed her arms. "Okay, look. This whole thing got blown way out of proportion." I leaned against the doorframe, careful not to put too much weight on my side. "You mocked me." "I didn't mean it like that," she snapped. "I thought you had people, friends, nurses. I asked you." "You laughed." She rolled her eyes. "You know how important that trip was. It was comped. A brand deal. I had to post content. I was in a hospital bed. And I apologized, she shot back. What more do you want from me? I studied her then, really studied her. This woman with my blood in her veins and absolutely none of my patience left. I want you to admit it, I said, that you never intended to show up. She tilted her head, considering, then shrugged. I didn't think I had to. The truth landed between us, clean and brutal. You're right, I said quietly. You didn't. Her brow furrowed. What's that supposed to mean? I lifted my phone. It means I emailed your sponsor. The color drained from her face. You didn't. I did, I said. I told them the truth, that you mocked your sister's surgery and used their wellness trip to dodge a family medical emergency. I attached screenshots. Her voice rose, sharp with panic. You can't do that. They pulled the campaign. She staggered back like I'd struck her. You cost me 10 grand. You cost me 10 years. She opened her mouth, fury and disbelief warring on her face. You're jealous. You've always been jealous. I laughed, the sound surprising even me. No, I was busy paying your bills. She surged forward, pointing a finger at my chest. You ruined my career. I stepped back and closed the door. This time it stayed shut. The silence afterward was strange. Not peaceful, not yet, but clean. Like the moment after a storm when the air smells sharp and new. Amber's Instagram went dark within 24 hours. The last post, her by the pool, captioned #grateful, disappeared overnight. I didn't check to see if she'd managed to claw back the money. I didn't care. A few days later, an envelope from the clinic arrived. Inside was a short, impersonal letter. Ms. Cruz, we have refunded $312 to your account. Inappropriate third-party use of your shared plan has been investigated and resolved. Amber had used my insurance again. This time they caught her. Mom tried to come back after that. First with texts. Can we please talk? I didn't sleep last night. I was a bad mother. For a moment, I believed it. I let myself imagine a version of her who meant it. Then the tone shifted. You've always been so distant. I just wanted peace between my girls. You're making me feel like a failure. I typed one sentence and sent it before I could talk myself out of it. If it hurts, it's because the mirror is finally clean. Then I blocked her. 3 weeks later, my cousin Rosa messaged me. You okay? Yes, I replied. Finally. She sent a heart, then added, just so you know, your mom and Amber are telling people you had some kind of emotional crisis, that you're lashing out. I laughed out loud, sitting alone in my living room, stitches still tender, heart oddly light. Let them talk. Let them scramble to rewrite the story. I went back to work not long after. My boss glanced at me, then said, take whatever time you need. You're solid. It was more compassion than I'd gotten from my family in years. I changed the locks on my apartment, sold the old couch Amber used to crash on after her breakups, bought a new one, turquoise, firm, comfortable in a way that felt intentional. I bought a coffee machine, nothing fancy, just mine. I signed up for pottery classes, always wanted to. 2 weeks later, I held my first mug in my hands, lopsided, a little ugly, honest. I loved it. Then the clinic called again. The receptionist sounded careful. Just a heads up, your mother tried to reassign you as her emergency contact. We didn't allow it, per your request. I thanked her, hung up, and called a lawyer. We drafted a formal notice disavowing any future financial responsibility for both my mother and Amber. I signed it with a steady hand. Love, but no more money. Amber texted from a new number a month later. You ruined my career. Happy now? I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I smiled. Yes, I was. 2 months passed without the sky falling. That surprised me more than anything. I kept waiting for the ache to come. The grief everyone warns you about when you cut ties with family. I expected to feel hollow, amputated, like I'd torn something essential out of my life and left a wound that would never close. Instead, I felt space. The first week after everything went silent, I slept. Real sleep. The kind where your body lets go because it doesn't have to stay alert for emergencies that aren't yours. I woke up without dread curling in my stomach. My phone stayed quiet. When it buzzed, it was a friend asking how I was, or a reminder about pottery class, not a crisis that needed my credit card. Rosa came by one afternoon with takeout and 0 questions. We ate on the floor because my new couch hadn't arrived yet. At one point, she looked at me and said, "You look lighter." I laughed, but later, alone, I realized she was right. A week after that, a message landed in my inbox from a Facebook account I didn't recognize. Hi, this is Jake, Amber's ex. I know this is random, but I saw what you did. how they reacted. I think you're the first person who ever held them accountable. Thank you. You made me feel a little less crazy. I stared at the screen until my eyes burned. Then I cried. Not the sharp, angry kind, but the soft kind that comes when someone finally says the thing you've been carrying alone. I saw it too, I typed back. You weren't crazy. My apartment started to feel different after that. Less like a storage unit for survival, more like a place I actually lived. I hung art I liked just because it made me laugh. Bought plants I would probably forget to water. Put my lopsided mug on the counter where I could see it every morning. It reminded me that imperfect things could still hold warmth. Mom tried once more. A letter this time. 3 pages of looping handwriting about mistakes and intentions and how hard motherhood was. I read it slowly, then folded it and placed it in a drawer. I didn't respond. Some conversations don't deserve an echo. At the farmer's market one Saturday, I ran into Maya, a friend from high school I hadn't seen in years. She asked how my family was. I surprised myself by answering honestly. They're where they belong, I said, far away. She studied my face for a moment, then smiled like she understood more than I'd said. I always wondered how you stayed so calm back then. I wasn't calm, I replied. I was surviving. That truth landed deep. I'd mistaken endurance for peace, silence for strength, being needed for being loved. 4 months have passed now. 4 months since I asked for a ride and got laughed at. 4 months since I lay in a hospital bed, shaking from anesthesia, and realized the only hands holding mine belonged to strangers. 4 months since I typed my mistake and watched my old life implode. It was the best decision I ever made. I don't miss them. That's the part no one tells you, that sometimes the absence doesn't ache. Sometimes it breathes. My days are quieter, but louder in the right ways. I hear my own thoughts again. I write now, mostly for myself, pages full of things I never allowed myself to say out loud, like, being needed is not the same as being loved. Forgiveness without accountability is just permission for the next wound. Amber tried again last week. New number, same tone. You ruined my career. Happy now? I didn't reply. I didn't block her either. I just let the message sit there, unread, until it lost its power. I make coffee every morning and sit by the window in my turquoise chair. I watch the city wake up. I breathe. I smile. The last message I ever sent to my family was simple. I hope someday you realize what you lost. But even if you don't, I haven't lost myself. For the first time in my life, I meant it. The ride I needed never came, but I still made it home on my own.